Hi, I'm Tash. Welcome to Tash's Library. Today's video is my February wrap-up. Yes, February is done and it was an awesome reading month for me. Number-wise, I read 13 books, which I am super happy about, but the quality was a little bit lower than in January. I'm going to rank them starting with number 13, moving up to my favorite book of the month. Number 13 is The Maid by Nita Prose. Now this is a mystery book and this was fulfilling the prompt a Goodreads winner, and that's because it actually won the Goodreads Thriller Mystery Award for 2022. However, I gave this a 2 stars. Yes, I know. I was a little bit disappointed with it. It follows Molly, who's neurodivergent and works as a maid at a fancy hotel. One day she finds a guest dead in his bed, and then she becomes enmeshed in the investigation. Now, what didn't I like about this? Why did I give it 2 stars? Firstly, I really disliked the ending. I found it very rushed. I found Molly inherently unlikable as well. And I found out that her actions were at times inconsistent with her character. I understand that she was neurodivergent and sometimes she was really not good with people, but then other times she seemed really good with people, and it was just inconsistent and it didn't make sense. And it wasn't just certain areas she was good at or bad at. There was just no predictability in how she was going to behave, and she made some very weird decisions that didn't really vibe with her character. I also found the plot very convenient and not very well developed, and I hated the detective character in this. I believe she behaved so irrationally for someone who's supposed to be an intelligent person. What I liked, however, were the great supporting characters. There were some wonderful characters in here. It was written in a very engaging manner, and I did keep on to read, and it wasn't a difficult slog or anything. It was enjoyable, it was a quick read, and generally it was a fun read. There were just so many things that irked me that I couldn't give it more than 2 stars. However, I would highly recommend this for any lovers of cozy mysteries. It's a fun read. Number 12, I listened to on audiobook, and this is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. It is a horror book, as the title kind of suggests, and I gave this 3 stars. The synopsis for this is that Abby and Gretchen have been best friends for years and are now in high school. And after an ill-fated night, Gretchen starts acting very strangely and Abby believes that she is possessed by a demon. So can she save her friend? Now, what I didn't like about this is I didn't find it overly scary, but keep in mind that Grady Hendrix does write quirky horror. So it isn't going to be the edge of your seat, terrifying horror necessarily. So maybe I went in with different expectations. I also found it quite predictable. However, I loved lots of things about this book. I loved the exploration of friendship. I really enjoyed all the 80s references. I found it a highly engaging read that explored a myriad of societal problems such as poverty and mental health, class, and bullying in a very interesting way. And I would highly recommend this book to all lovers of quirky horror and body horror, and those wanting to relive the 80s, albeit in a slightly disturbing manner. Number 11 was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is the first in the Scholomance series, which is a trilogy, and they've all been released now. I did give this 3 stars. It follows Galadriel, who's a bit of a misfit at this deadly magical boarding school where students can't go home. They're stuck there till they graduate, and the school is pretty keen on killing them off. So they have to be super savvy and have each other's backs. What I didn't like about this book is that Galadriel is highly annoying. Now, It is a YA book. And in some ways, there is some of that teenage angst. And I don't think it's fair for me to say that her character annoyed me because, of course, YA isn't my age range. And I'm assuming that someone who is a teenager would vibe with this a lot more. So I've kind of, it's something that annoyed me, but it's not something that I allowed to reduce my estimation of this book. The thing that did reduce the estimation of this book for me is it was very predictable. And I mean, it was engaging, but it was very, very predictable. And 3 stars is a fairly solid for me. A 3-star means I enjoyed it. What I really liked about this book is the intriguing premise. It had some great supporting characters. It was well paced. And the setting is so imaginative and includes some really cool magic. I'd recommend this for YA fantasy readers, for those in search of darker Harry Potter, and all lovers of magic schools or dark academia. Number 10 is The Rook by Daniel O'Malley. This is the first book in a trilogy called The Rook Files. It's an urban fantasy, and I read this on ebook. It is described as Bourne Identity meets X-Men, and I can guarantee that that's exactly what you get. The main character, Mythony, wakes up with no memories and finds out that she's an operative in a top secret organization dealing with paranormal threats. So she has to quickly learn as much as she can without really giving the game away that she's lost her memory, in order to find out who took her memories and also to save Britain from a mounting threat. I gave this 4 stars. What brought it down for me was there wasn't a lot of action. It wasn't very fast paced. I like a bit more pace to my books. There were a lot of meetings and exposition through letters because she wrote a sequence of letters to herself before she lost her memory. And therefore the main character is actually learning about her world through letters. It's an interesting approach, but it does slow down the pace somewhat. I also didn't feel very attached to the main character. I don't know why. I just didn't feel particularly invested in what was going to happen to her. What I really liked about this book, though, was learning about the characters in the world alongside the main character. So even though the letters led themselves to a lot of exposition, it was interesting to find out about the organization in a fairly inventive manner. There were some really interesting superpowers. The premise was highly creative, and I really enjoyed this version of alternative London. I'd highly recommend this for all lovers of urban fantasy, thriller readers wanting to branch out into fantasy because it does kind of stride both genres, and also those looking for a fantasy novel featuring spies and the paranormal. Highly recommended. Number 9 was a middle grade that I picked up. This was not part of my TBR game. It was just an additional book I picked up. I gave this 4 stars. This was just really cool. It was just an impulse buy, and it's the first in a planned 5-book series. And it follows Cassie, who was left at a boarding school 7 years ago by her mother, who promised she would be back to collect her. She runs away from school eventually because her mother doesn't turn up, and she comes to realize that she's a witch from a long line of witches. She makes friends and confronts different threats such as goblins and fairies. I gave this 4 stars. What I didn't like about it is that some aspects were not very satisfactorily explained. So some elements of the book were explained in so much detail you could picture them very clearly, but then things like the learning of magic were just sort of skimmed over. And I really wanted more of the magic school element of it. What I really liked about this, though, were the familiars in this. There's some awesome familiars. There's a great development of friendships. The magic-infused world is just so whimsical and cozy, and this makes for such a fun, heartwarming read. This lifted me up on a really bad day, and therefore I would recommend this book to anyone looking for a light, comforting read, and also lovers of Nevermore and The Worst Witch. Number 8 was a reread for me. This is All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first in the Murderbot Diaries series. This is a little novella, so super skinny little thing. And I had listened to it previously on audiobook, and I so much more enjoyed it actually in paperback form. I gave this 4 stars, and it features Murderbot, a security droid who has hacked his governor module so that he can watch soap operas. And when a mission on another planet goes awry, he has to then investigate and protect his people. This was just a pickup. It wasn't part of my TBR game again. And what I didn't like about this is it does become a tad technical at times, and the other characters outside of Murderbot aren't really developed. And I guess I understand why this happens, because we're really viewing it from the perspective of Murderbot, and it is in his point of view, and he doesn't really understand people. So it makes sense that you don't get an insight into the other characters. What I really liked about this is Murderbot is hilarious. Like, he's a very funny, witty point of view character, and it's really interesting to view the world through his eyes. The plot is interesting, engaging. This to me is a cozy read. It is easy reading. It's a great palate cleanser, and once again, something really uplifting for a bad day. I would recommend this for those in search of a light-hearted science fiction novella, lovers of AI and augmented technology, just someone looking for a short, cozy read. Number 7 is Hounded by Kevin Hearn. This is the first in the Iron Druid series. I read this on my Kindle and gave it 5 stars. Now, this wasn't part of my TBR game. However, I have joined the Buzzword Reading Challenge, and the word for February is verb, and hounded is a verb in past tense. So I'm going to count this for this. It follows Atticus, who's a shape-shifting druid living in Arizona and running an occult shop. He's being hunted, however, by the Fae, and he encounters a number of different deities who he may or may not trust, and has to keep his identity hidden from everyone else. What I didn't like about this is that there really isn't a lot of character development. It's very much a plot-driven book. This is great for some people. I like a bit more character. But what I loved about this is the animal companion, which is a wolfhound named Oberon. And oh my gosh, I am in love with Oberon. I also found this a very fun read. I can't wait to continue the series. I really, really enjoyed it, and I can see myself using this as a bit of a palate cleanser. It integrates various mythologies really well. And I would recommend this for any readers of mystery novels who want to kind of delve into fantasy, lovers of urban fantasy, such as the Dresden Files, and lovers of animal companions. You have to check this one out. Number 6 is once again not a prompted book. It's just another book I picked up. It's The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is part of the Harry Potter series. I did listen to this on audio. It is part of my audio reread of this series. And I gave this 5 stars. Now, the previous Harry Potter ones that I've listened to on audio this year, I actually took down to 4 stars, even though I had really loved them in the past, because some of the plot holes kind of hit me. However, Prisoner of Azkaban was always my favorite one. And you know what? It's kind of stood up as my favorite novel of the series so far. We shall see how the others go. Now, I don't think I need to give Harry Potter much introduction. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but this particular book follows Harry Potter, who's in his 3rd year of magic school after discovering that he is a wizard, and he continues to navigate the study of magic, his friendships, and the looming threat of Voldemort. What I didn't like about this is, as I said before, I am finding Harry increasingly annoying. I kind of get annoyed that he has zero common sense and restraint. What I really like about this is it introduces my favorite character, which is Professor Lupin. Has a great plot. Once again, cool magic and setting, and explores the themes of friendship, family, prejudice beautifully. Who would I recommend this for? Lovers of magic schools and magical worlds, and those looking for a fun yet intricately woven middle grade fantasy. Number 5 was for my feel-good prompt, and this is The Humans by Matt Haig. Now, I will preempt this of saying this was not feel-good. It wasn't. I really went in with different expectations. But however, I still gave this 5 stars. Now, the synopsis is that this extraterrestrial takes on the form of Professor Andrew Martin in order to curtail human development. He is then bamboozled by human customs and has to navigate various human relationships. What I didn't like about this, as I said, is it was much less feel-good than I expected. And someone did warn me in the comments that it wasn't as feel-good as I'd expected. And I think I was confused by the adorable dog and the fact that I actually found The Midnight Library by Matt Haig to be so hopeful. This was a bit less hopeful, but I loved it. It has an incredible insight into humanity, life, and what really matters. Great characterization of Martin, of a lot of character development throughout the book. The plot is so quirky. There's a gorgeous dog in it, absolutely adorable dog. The dog is there and he's okay. And it does explore mental health quite effectively from my perspective. Who would I recommend this to? Lovers of books that make you think about life and values, and those interested in books exploring mental health, family, and love. Number 4 was for the prompts more than 500 pages, and for this one I picked Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is a science fiction book, the first in a trilogy entitled Children of Time. I read this on my Kindle. The premise of it is a dying Earth decides to terraform a number of planets and fast forward evolution through the use of a virus. When a generation ship then seeks refuge on one of these terraformed planets, they find that things haven't gone quite as expected. I gave this 5 stars. What I didn't like about it was I initially found it a little bit difficult to get into. I found it quite fragmented. It does jump from point of view to point of view very rapidly, and it also has massive time jumps, which are a little bit confusing, a bit disorienting. And I found the sections as well focusing on the human characters a little less engaging, possibly because of these time jumps. However, what I loved about this book is the terraforming an alien virus premise. I found it to be a fascinating study of human nature. It explored that conflict over resources, survival, war, what it is to be human versus non-human, but also how similar all sentient beings can actually be. It raises great questions about progress and whether it is always synonymous with conflict and war or with knowledge. Has fabulous non-human protagonists, and the world building is phenomenal. I would highly recommend this book for any lovers of First Contact or terraforming novels, those looking for a science fiction novel featuring non-human protagonists, and lovers of philosophically grounded science fiction. It is just an incredible book that I believe will become a masterpiece of the genre. Number 3 was actually my book club book for the month, and the prompt for this one was Spring, and it's Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This is a contemporary literary novel, and I read this on Kindle as well. It follows Elizabeth Zott, who's a chemist trying to fight her way through a career in science in a highly misogynistic 1960s America. However, a series of unfortunate events leads her to becoming the host of a cooking show. I gave this 5 stars. What I didn't like about it is it's not really my genre. It really isn't. So it wasn't my favorite because of this. I also found it a bit emotionally confronting at times. And I think that comes down to the fact that contemporary novels, emotionally intense novels, are not my vibe at all. They're not my jam. And therefore, this is something that's going to temper my enjoyment of the novel. However, if that's what you're into, then it's amazing and you are in for such a good read. Another thing I found brought my enjoyment a little bit down was the ending was a tad contrived from my perspective, but it was nevertheless satisfying. What I loved about this, however, were the characters. The characterization was incredible. The characters were so lovable and intriguing. And even though they, on the surface, were quite stereotyped characters, they were incredible. And I really cared what happened to them. I enjoyed the ideas in this novel, such as gender inequality and women in science and all those stereotypes. And the prose was beautiful. It was highly engaging, highly readable. And I'd highly recommend this book for any lovers of science in novels, but also those interested in feminism and women's history. Number 2 was my book for the prompt young adult. And this is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first in the Skyward series. I can't remember how many books there are in the series. However, they do follow Spencer, who dreams of being a pilot just like her father. But his disgrace as a coward significantly limits her options. And she finally gets an opportunity to attend flight school where she learns about her father's past and about the alien threat to her planet. I gave this 5 stars. It was such a good read. Now, what I didn't like about it, because I always like to identify some of the things I don't like in books, is Spencer's attitude at times. Having said that, it was highly consistent with her age and life experiences. So I think it was something that irked me at times, but I actually think it was perfect for the novel. What I loved about this was a unique world, and what else can you expect from Sanderson? The plot was intriguing and very well paced, and the action scenes were incredible. There's some great dogfights that happen in this. The character development was highly impressive. The relationships and found family elements were so well developed, and there's a very entertaining AI character in this as well. I would highly recommend this for those looking for a fast-paced and unique young adult science fiction novel, lovers of aerial battles, and found family tropes. And my favorite book of the month at number 1 was For the Prompt Features Death. And this is City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the first in the Divine Cities trilogy. It explores the city of Bulakov that used to be the domain of the gods, but the gods were killed in the past in a series of wars. And when a murder occurs, this diplomat visits the city to investigate, finding, however, that everything may not be quite as it seems, and maybe the gods aren't as dead as previously believed. What I didn't like about this? Absolutely nothing. I loved everything about this novel. That's why I gave it 5 stars. That's why it's my favorite book of the month. What I loved everything, right? I loved the imaginative and unique world building. I loved the characters. I cared about all of them. Some of them I hated, some of them I loved. Some of them were so complicated and nuanced. The plot just kept me wanting to read. I think I read this in like 2 days, and it's a pretty chunky book considering. And I would totally recommend this for pretty much anyone, but particularly for lovers of thrillers who are wanting to branch out into fantasy, because there is quite a lot of the thriller element in this, and also those searching for a fantasy with political intrigue. And that's it. They're my 13 books for February, I fulfilled all the prompts for my TBR game. So I am very happy about that and still managed to pick up some additional books. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Please comment. I enjoy reading your comments. And till I see you next time, take care.